The world seemed to tilt on its axis the moment I saw the wreckage. Twisted metal, shattered glass, and the sickening sweet smell of gasoline hung heavy in the air. It wasn't just a car. It was the culmination of 1,000 sacrifices, a tangible representation of my dreams. And there he stood, my own brother, a smirk playing on his lips as if he'd just won some twisted game, the crimson sunset painting the scene in hues of mocking irony. He thought he had broken me, that the sight of my destroyed dream would be enough to send me spiraling. He was wrong. It was the spark that ignited a fire within me, a cold, calculating fury that would consume everything in its path. If you've ever felt betrayed by a family member who should have had your back, subscribe now and join a community where we turn pain into power. The Tesla Model S Plaid had been more than just a car to me. My name is Amber, and I'd spent 1,094 days meticulously saving every penny, sacrificing every comfort, working relentless overtime shifts, and skipping countless meals. Every spare moment was dedicated to earning enough for that car. It was a symbol of my independence, my hard work, and my unwavering determination to achieve my goals. The day I finally drove it off the lot was one of the proudest of my life. I remember the electric hum of the engine, the sleek lines of the body, and the feeling of pure, unadulterated joy as I pressed the accelerator. That joy was short-lived, brutally extinguished in a matter of 11 minutes by the one person who should have cherished it almost as much as I did. He had asked to borrow it, a simple request that I foolishly granted, blinded by a misplaced sense of familial trust. He knew how much that car meant to me, how much I had sacrificed to obtain it. That's what made his actions all the more devastating. He took my dream, crumpled it into a mangled heap of metal, and then had the audacity to smirk as if it were a joke. The sound of the impact still echoes in my ears, a screech of tires, a sickening crunch, and then silence. A silence broken only by my brother's callous laughter and the ominous hiss of escaping fluids. He stood there, amidst the wreckage, completely unscathed, as if he hadn't a care in the world. The crimson of the sunset mirrored the rising tide of fury within me, but I swallowed it down, forcing myself to remain calm, to assess the situation with a cold, detached perspective, because in that moment, I knew that revenge wouldn't be a matter of yelling or screaming, but a carefully orchestrated symphony of retribution. His next words confirmed it. He started to say, "Mom and," implying that their usual protective shield would absolve him of all consequences, that their blind favoritism would once again allow him to skate free. He had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in their eyes. I was the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who always picked up the pieces after his messes.
But this time, the pieces were too shattered to mend with simple forgiveness. This time, there would be consequences. The world seemed to swim before my eyes, a kaleidoscope of disbelief and simmering rage. I bit back the retort that threatened to erupt, the torrent of accusations and hurt that clawed at my throat. He expected me to explode, to crumble. He wanted the satisfaction of seeing me break. But I refused to give it to him. "It's okay," I managed to choke out, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "We'll figure it out." The look of surprise on his face was almost worth the pain. Almost. The next few days were a blur of insurance adjusters, police reports, and endless phone calls. The car was totaled, of course, a complete write-off. The insurance company, predictably, dragged their feet, citing unclear circumstances and ongoing investigation. I knew what that meant. They suspected foul play, and my brother's flimsy excuse of losing control wasn't holding water. But proving it was another matter entirely. He was sticking to his story, and with Mom and Dad already circling the wagons, ready to defend their precious son, I knew I was fighting a losing battle. Sleepless nights became the norm, the silence of my apartment amplifying the gnawing anxiety that coiled in my stomach. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the twisted wreckage, the mocking smirk on his face, the shattered pieces of my dreams scattered across the asphalt. I tried to reason with my parents, to explain the depth of my sacrifice, the sheer magnitude of his betrayal. But their ears were deafened by years of ingrained favoritism. "He's your brother," they'd say, their voices laced with disappointment. "You need to forgive him." Forgive him? For what? For demolishing my dreams? For betraying my trust? For showing absolutely no remorse? The word felt like a slap in the face, a cruel and senseless expectation. I tried to find solace in my friends, but their well-meaning platitudes felt hollow and inadequate. They couldn't understand the unique sting of betrayal by a family member, the insidious way it burrowed into your soul and poisoned everything it touched. The weight of the injustice pressed down on me, suffocating me with its relentless pressure. I felt isolated, alone, adrift in a sea of indifference. The financial strain was immense. The car payments still loomed large, a constant reminder of my shattered investment. I picked up extra shifts at work, pushing myself to the point of exhaustion, but it felt like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. The stress was taking its toll. My hair started to thin, dark circles appeared under my eyes, and my appetite vanished. I was a shell of my former self, consumed by anger and resentment. He, on the other hand, seemed to be thriving. He flaunted his newfound freedom, driving around in a borrowed car, partying with his friends, completely oblivious to the wreckage he had left in his wake.
The sight of him, carefree and unrepentant, fueled the fire within me, hardening my resolve. I would not let him get away with this. I would not let him destroy me. I would rebuild, and I would make him pay. My plan was simple: patience. He would become complacent. He would assume he was in the clear, and that was when I would strike. The abyss yawned open, and I teetered on the edge. One misstep, one moment of weakness, and I knew I would be swallowed whole. The insurance company officially denied the claim, citing evidence of intentional damage, a thinly veiled accusation that my brother had deliberately wrecked the car. My parents, predictably, closed ranks, refusing to acknowledge the possibility of their golden boy's culpability. They even had the audacity to suggest that I was somehow responsible, that I should have known better than to lend him the car in the first place. Their words were like shards of glass, each one slicing deeper into my already wounded spirit. I felt utterly alone, abandoned by the very people who were supposed to love and support me unconditionally. The financial burden became unbearable. I was drowning in debt, working myself to the bone, and still barely managing to keep my head above water. I started having nightmares, vivid replays of the accident, the screech of tires, the crunch of metal, the mocking smirk on my brother's face. Sleep became a battleground, a nightly torment of guilt, anger, and despair. My health deteriorated rapidly. The constant stress and lack of sleep weakened my immune system, leaving me vulnerable to every passing virus. I lost weight, my skin turned pale, and my eyes were perpetually bloodshot. I became a ghost of my former self, a walking shadow haunted by the specter of my shattered dream. One particularly bleak evening, after a grueling double shift, I came home to find an eviction notice taped to my door. I sank to the floor, the weight of the world crushing me. It felt like everything was conspiring against me, that I was destined to fail, to be swallowed by the darkness. Hot tears streamed down my face, a mixture of anger, frustration, and utter exhaustion. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to destroy everything in my path. But I was too weak, too drained, too broken. I laid there for what felt like hours, wallowing in self-pity, convinced that there was no way out. The rain hammered against the windows, mimicking the relentless pounding in my head. But then something shifted. A flicker of defiance, a spark of resilience ignited deep within my soul. I thought of my brother, his smug face, his callous disregard for my pain. I thought of my parents, their blind favoritism, their unwavering support of his destructive behavior. And I realized that I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let them break me. I had worked too hard, sacrificed too much to simply give up. The tears stopped flowing, replaced by a cold, steely resolve. I stood up, my legs shaky, but my determination unwavering. I ripped the eviction notice off the door and crumpled it in my fist. "Not today," I whispered, my voice hoarse but firm. "Not ever." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, a single lamp illuminating the worn surface. I pulled out a notebook and a pen, and I started to write. I wrote down everything that had happened, every injustice, every betrayal, every detail I could remember. As I wrote, a plan began to form in my mind, a plan born of anger,
fueled by resentment and guided by a burning desire for retribution. It wouldn't be quick, it wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be pretty, but it would be effective. I would make them pay, not with violence or anger, but with cunning and precision. I would use their own weaknesses against them, expose their hypocrisy, and dismantle their carefully constructed facade. The victim was dead. The planner had arrived. The rain outside had stopped, and the first rays of dawn peeked through the clouds, painting the sky in hues of hope and promise. But in my heart, there was only darkness, a cold, calculating darkness that would guide my every move. The game had changed, and they had no idea what was coming. The first step was gathering evidence, irrefutable proof of my brother's deliberate act. I knew that relying on the police or the insurance company was futile. They were already biased in his favor. I had to become my own investigator, my own forensic analyst. I revisited the scene of the accident, meticulously combing through the wreckage, searching for anything that might contradict his story. The area had been cleared, of course, but I managed to find a few small fragments of the car's black box recorder, miraculously intact. I carefully collected them, storing them in a secure container. My technology became my ally. Back at my temporary, dingy apartment, I spent hours poring over online forums, seeking advice from experts in data recovery. It was a long shot, but I had to try. After days of painstaking effort, I managed to extract some corrupted data from the fragments, enough to piece together a partial record of the car's final moments. The data revealed a sudden, sharp acceleration just before the impact, followed by a deliberate steering maneuver that sent the car careening into the barrier. It was damning evidence, but I needed more. I remembered that there was a security camera mounted on a nearby building, pointed directly at the intersection where the accident occurred. I spent days tracking down the building's owner, a surly old man who was initially reluctant to cooperate. But after a hefty bribe and a sob story about my wronged family, he finally relented and allowed me to access the security footage. The footage was grainy and distorted, but it clearly showed my brother speeding down the road, weaving erratically through traffic, and then deliberately swerving into the barrier.
He even paused for a second before driving off in a hurry. It was the smoking gun I needed. He had even been laughing to the person in the passenger seat. He hadn't been alone. Next, I needed to understand my parents' finances. Their unwavering support of my brother was not just emotional, it was financial as well. They had always bailed him out of trouble, paying his debts, covering his mistakes, enabling his destructive behavior. I suspected that they were secretly funding his lavish lifestyle, providing him with a safety net that allowed him to act with impunity. To uncover the truth, I needed access to their financial records, which felt like a violation, but they had made their choice. This was war. I knew that gaining access to their bank accounts directly was impossible, but I remembered that my mother often left her financial statements lying around the house. I started making more frequent visits, offering to help with chores, feigning a desire to reconnect. During one of those visits, while my mother was distracted, I managed to sneak into her office and quickly photograph her most recent bank statements. The statements revealed a pattern of large, unexplained withdrawals, followed by transfers to my brother's account. It was clear that they were secretly subsidizing his life, shielding him from the consequences of his actions. That was the leverage I needed. Now that I had both the accident footage and the financial records, it was time to bring in the final piece of the puzzle. Remembering that my brother wasn't alone in the car, I set out to find the accomplice. This took me into the darkest corners of the city, following a trail of whispers and rumors. It led me to a dive bar frequented by his shady friends. After a week of pretending to be interested in my brother, the bartender spilled that his friend Sarah had been in the car with him. Sarah, he said, had been bragging about the accident, calling it a hilarious prank. I found Sarah, and she was initially defiant, but after I showed her the security footage and explained the potential legal consequences of her involvement, she cracked. She confessed everything, admitting that my brother had planned the whole thing, that he had even offered her money to keep quiet. She gave me a signed affidavit detailing her account of the events, solidifying my case. I now had everything I needed: irrefutable evidence of my brother's deliberate act, proof of my parents' financial complicity, and a sworn statement from his accomplice. The stage was set. The final step was to decide how to reveal the truth. I considered going to the police, but I knew that my parents' influence could still sway the investigation. I thought about confronting my brother directly, but I knew that he would simply deny everything.
I wanted to expose the truth in a way that would be undeniable, irreversible, and utterly devastating. Then it hit me. Social media. My parents were obsessed with their online image, meticulously curating a facade of perfection and respectability. They were active on every platform, constantly posting photos of their happy family, their successful son, their charming life. They were vulnerable to public opinion. I created an anonymous social media account and started posting excerpts from the security footage, the bank statements, and Sarah's affidavit. I tagged local news outlets, consumer protection agencies, and my parents' friends and colleagues. The posts went viral almost immediately. The comments section exploded with outrage and disbelief. People were horrified by my brother's actions and disgusted by my parents' complicity. The story spread like wildfire, reaching millions of people around the world. The next day, my parents' lives began to unravel. They were bombarded with angry phone calls, emails, and text messages. Their social media accounts were flooded with hateful comments. Their friends and colleagues distanced themselves. My brother was suspended from his job. The police reopened the investigation. The insurance company filed a lawsuit to recover the money they had paid out on the claim. My parents' carefully constructed facade had crumbled, exposing the ugly truth beneath. They lost everything: their reputation, their friends, their money, and their son's future. As for me, I watched it all unfold with a sense of cold satisfaction. I had achieved my revenge, not with violence or anger, but with truth and justice. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was an ending, and it was enough. The taste of victory was bitter. While watching their perfect world disintegrate was satisfying, it didn't fill the void. The sleepless nights, the lost car, the constant anxiety, it had changed me. But it wasn't over. The greatest satisfaction was yet to come. I knew my brother. He wouldn't take this lying down. He was arrogant, entitled, and predictable. He would try to salvage what was left of his reputation to spin the narrative in his favor. And that's exactly what I was counting on. I began to subtly feed information to select members of his inner circle, painting a picture of a remorseful sibling seeking reconciliation. I crafted emails from an anonymous account hinting at evidence that could exonerate him, but only if he was willing to cooperate. The bait was irresistible. Within days, he reached out, his tone a carefully constructed mix of contrition and desperation. I played along, feigning forgiveness, offering him a glimmer of hope. We arranged to meet at an old warehouse on the outskirts of town, a deserted location with no witnesses, the perfect setting for the final act. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited for him to arrive. This was it, the culmination of months of planning, the moment when I would finally confront him and expose his lies. I had to be careful. He was volatile and unpredictable, and I couldn't afford to underestimate him. He arrived an hour late, his face pale, his eyes darting nervously around the warehouse. He was alone. Good. He tried to act casual, offering a weak smile, but I could see the fear lurking beneath the surface. "I don't know why you asked me here," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "But if you think you can blackmail me, you're wrong." I laughed, a cold, hollow sound that echoed through the cavernous space. "Blackmail you? No, I'm not interested in your money. I'm interested in the truth." I gestured to a table in the center of the warehouse, where a laptop sat open, displaying a live video feed. On the screen, my parents were sitting in their living room, oblivious to what was about to unfold. Their faces were etched with worry and confusion. "I thought they should have a front row seat," I explained, my voice dripping with sarcasm. His eyes widened in horror as he realized the trap I had set. He lunged towards the laptop, but I was ready for him. I grabbed a crowbar that I had hidden behind my back and swung it with all my might, connecting with his kneecap. He crumpled to the ground, screaming in pain. "Don't even think about it," I said, my voice ice cold. "This is my show now." I dragged him to a chair and tied him to it with industrial-strength zip ties. He struggled against the restraints, but it was no use. He was completely at my mercy. I turned to the laptop and addressed my parents directly. "Hello, Mom? Dad? I'm sure you're wondering what's going on. Well, let me explain." I proceeded to lay out the entire story, from the accident to the cover-up, presenting all the evidence I had gathered. I showed them the security footage, played the audio recording of Sarah's confession, and displayed the bank statements proving their financial complicity. As they watched, their faces drained of color, their expressions shifting from disbelief to horror to shame. My brother squirmed in his chair, cursing and pleading, but I ignored him. This was their moment of reckoning. When I finished, there was silence in the warehouse, broken only by my brother's ragged breathing. I turned to him, my eyes filled with contempt. "Do you have anything to say?" He spat at me, a pathetic gesture of defiance. "I hate you," he snarled. I smiled. "I know."
I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. "I almost forgot," I said. "This contains all the evidence I've collected, along with a detailed account of everything that's happened. I'm going to upload it to every news outlet, every social media platform, every government agency I can find." His eyes widened in panic. "You wouldn't," he gasped. "Oh, but I would," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "In fact, I already have." I pressed a button on a remote control, and the laptop screen flickered to life, displaying a series of progress bars as the files began to upload. It was over. There was nothing he could do to stop it. The truth was out there, and it would consume him. The sound of sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. The police were on their way. I turned to my parents one last time, their faces a mask of despair. "Consider this my resignation," I said. "I'm done with this family." I walked out of the warehouse, leaving my brother tied to the chair, his life in ruins. I didn't look back. As I stepped out into the night, I felt a sense of liberation, a weight lifting from my shoulders. I had finally broken free. But the game was not yet over, because I knew, with chilling certainty, that my brother had one final, desperate card to play, and it would be aimed directly at me. The warehouse echoed with the rising wail of sirens, a symphony of justice finally arriving. I walked away, the cool night air stinging my face, a stark contrast to the burning anger that had consumed me for so long. I knew what was coming. My brother, cornered and desperate, wouldn't just accept defeat. He would lash out, aiming to destroy the last thing I had left, my freedom. As I reached my car, a black SUV screeched to a halt in front of me, blocking my path. Two figures emerged, their faces obscured by the shadows. I recognized them instantly. They were associates of my brother, the kind of people who solve problems with violence, not words. "Get in the car," one of them growled, his voice rough and menacing. "Your brother wants to see you." I stood my ground, refusing to show fear. "Tell him I'm done playing his games," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. They lunged at me, their movements swift and brutal. I fought back, but I was outnumbered and outmatched. They overpowered me, forcing me into the back of the SUV. The world blurred as they sped away, the sirens fading into the distance. My heart pounded in my chest. This was it. This was how it ended. The SUV pulled into a deserted construction site, the skeletal remains of unfinished buildings looming against the night sky. They dragged me out of the car and into one of the structures, a concrete shell filled with debris and shadows. My brother was waiting, his face contorted with rage. His leg was bandaged, the crimson stain seeping through the white. "You ruined me," he screamed, his voice cracking with emotion. "You took everything from me." I stared at him, unflinching. "You did this to yourself," I said, my voice cold and even. "You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences." He lunged at me, his hands outstretched, but his associates held him back. "I'm going to make you pay," he hissed, his eyes burning with hatred. "I'm going to take everything from you, just like you took everything from me." He signaled to his associates, and they stepped forward, their faces grim. This was the end. I closed my eyes, bracing for the inevitable. But then, a new sound pierced the night, the unmistakable whir of helicopter blades. A spotlight illuminated the construction site, blindingly bright. A voice boomed from the sky, amplified by a loudspeaker. "Police, this is a raid. Everyone on the ground, put your hands in the air." My brother's face crumpled. His plan had failed. The police had been tracking his associates, anticipating his next move. They had known all along that he would try to retaliate. It was over. He had lost. His associates released me, their faces etched with fear. They knew that resistance was futile. The police swarmed the construction site, arresting everyone in sight. My brother was taken into custody, his face a mask of defeat. As they led him away, he looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and despair. I met his gaze, unwavering. I felt nothing. The police took my statement, and then I was free to go. As I walked away from the construction site,
the flashing lights of the police cars fading into the distance. I felt a sense of profound exhaustion. The game was finally over. I had won. But the victory felt hollow. The fallout was swift and brutal. The evidence I had released went viral, exposing my brother's actions and my parents' complicity to the world. My brother was charged with multiple felonies, facing years in prison. My parents were ostracized by their friends and colleagues, their reputation in tatters. Their carefully constructed facade of perfection had shattered, revealing the ugly truth beneath. They lost everything: their social standing, their financial security, and their son's future. As for Sarah, she turned state's evidence, further solidifying the case against my brother. She was granted immunity in exchange for her testimony, but her reputation was forever tarnished.
I watched it all unfold from a distance, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. I had achieved my revenge, but it hadn't brought me the peace I had hoped for. The pain of the betrayal still lingered, a dull ache in my heart. But I knew that I had done what I had to do. I had exposed the truth, and I had held those responsible accountable for their actions. Justice had been served. I packed my bags and left town, seeking a fresh start, a new beginning. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that I couldn't stay in that place any longer. It was time to move on, to rebuild my life, to find a way to heal. Years later, I received a letter from my brother, postmarked from prison. He wrote of his remorse, his regret, his desire to make amends. He acknowledged the pain he had caused and accepted responsibility for his actions. He didn't ask for forgiveness, but he hoped that one day I could find it in my heart to understand. I read the letter, feeling a flicker of something I couldn't quite identify. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't hatred either. Perhaps it was simply acceptance. I filed the letter away, a reminder of the past, a testament to the enduring power of truth and justice. Revenge isn't sweet, it's necessary. It's the price some people pay for thinking they can get away with anything. They lost everything. I just smiled. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.